afternoon and welcome. My name is Leandria Michael, and I'm the president of the Savannah Jaycees. Our mission is professional development through community involvement, and so it's an honor to have the United Way represented at one of our last meetings of the year. The United Way, according to the website, and I love this tagline, it says, "We mobilize the caring power of our community. We raise money and awareness to support nonprofit organizations, to provide direct services where there are gaps, and to advance volunteerism throughout the region." We have the honor of hosting the United Way Chair, Chief Terry Enoch, tonight, and that is who you will hear from. Feel free to ask questions or talk online, and most of all, feel free to give since the United Way's campaign is almost over. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Well, thank you so much for allowing me to be here tonight to speak about something that is has grown on me. It really is an emotional point for me because this campaign has been something special. I've had the opportunity to go to the front lines of where the real community service is being provided, and I've seen families and children struggle. I've seen families that really find it hard just to make ends meet. That before the pandemic, they were already working, 2 jobs. Some of them had really good paying jobs, and then all of a sudden the pandemic hit, and we're in just staggering unemployment. I mean, we're in the Great Depression numbers. This region has never experienced anything like this before, and so I thank God that we have the United Way. And I'm going to talk a little bit about United Way, and I'm going to share some information with you about what we're doing in the community, the impact that COVID has had. I will talk about our response to the pandemic. I'll share some information on our efforts to rebuild and recover, which I think is really important, that we rebuild and we're doing things now, but what happens after the pandemic is over? What happens to our community and how we move forward? And then we'll talk a little bit about call of action and what role you will play. My grandfather always said, you tell people what they can do and how they can help. So I want to start by just telling you a little bit about myself. I'm the chief of police for the Savannah Chatham County Public School System. Although I've been in law enforcement, this is 36 years. Someone said, you don't look like you've been in law enforcement that long, or you're that old. But I can promise you, I've been rode hard. I've been rode hard, and but let me tell you, this journey has been amazing. It's been amazing, and so I grew up in an old farm town, in a place called Summerfield, North Carolina. It's right outside of Greensboro. My grandfather was a tobacco farmer, and what's unique about my life experience, my journey, is that my parents. My father remained there in North Carolina, and my mother separated and moved to Atlanta she brought with her 6 kids. And so she moved to what we call public housing. And that community that she moved into in the early 70s, this was around 71, 72, it turned out to be a place they call Little Vietnam. And if you Google East Lake Meadows, you'll find that it is now one of the nation's model communities where huge turnaround has taken place. So why do I tell you that? So I grew up in this farming town, and I lived with my grandfather, and I learned the importance of giving. So my grandmother died at a young age. They had 11 kids, and so my grandfather kept all the kids together. And so he didn't give them out to relatives. He kept all 11 kids there. And so my mother's siblings, they grew up with a strong sense of family. And that strong sense of family and those values really resonated with me. And in that farming community, it was a small tobacco farming community. We all depended on each other in order to get the product out of the field and get it to the market. And so the labor and the working together, didn't matter what color you were. We were all farmers. And many of my friends they were friends not because of what they looked like. They were just friends because, we had a lot in common. We had some commonalities. So when I came here to Savannah, well, let me say I moved to Atlanta. Right around the time to finish out high school, I felt like I wanted to experience the concrete jungle. And little did I know, that experience impacted me, and it really, it was a driver for me doing the work that I'm doing today. So it was there when I moved there with my mother that I saw poverty in its fullness, the impact, the symptoms of poverty. I saw drug dealers. I saw gun violence. I had a very close friend that got murdered right in front of me, and I was running and the person was shooting at me. And here's this farm boy, and all of a sudden, can you imagine the traumatic experience, the wounds that I still carry with me today? And so what happened there is that during my high school years, I dropped out. I dropped out one year, and my mother's sister, who lived on the other side of town, who also lived at the reason she moved to Atlanta, was a juvenile probation officer. And she actually saved me. She saved me. And today, she's my aunt. She passed away with cancer. But one of the things she asked me to do was to pay it forward. She didn't ask me for anything back. She got me. She moved me in their home. She loved me like I was one of her own. She got me back on track in my grades, and I ended up finishing high school. And she actually had a cousin that attended Savannah State University. She actually filled the application out for me. And the rest is who I am today. I've been in law enforcement now for about 36 years. I retired as a colonel with the sheriff's office. I was my last assignment was jail administrator. I went on and I ran a tremendous program that I attribute back to. Let me tell you how United Way plays into this. That I attribute back to my experience living in Eastlake in Atlanta. I was the executive director of a reentry program of a program called Savannah Impact. And what Savannah Impact did is anyone who was charged with 7 deadly sins who went into the prison system out of Savannah, Chatham County. Eventually, what goes up eventually is going to come down. What goes in the prison system eventually going to come back into our community. So I had a great opportunity to serve as that executive director. We helped those that were returning back into our community to do it successfully, and to get jobs, to address issues, mental health issues, educational issues, housing issues, transportation issues, all the things that United Way is doing, right? And so while I was there, I was called upon to be the interim assistant chief of the Metropolitan Police Department. And so it was there that while serving there, I discovered that God had a higher purpose for me. As a matter of fact, when I was jail administrator, one of the things that we were doing is when we were trying to improve the conditions of the jail, of our local jail. The local jail is a place that people that we know that may make mistakes, or people that are awaiting trial to be adjudicated in our court system. But it was there I met 3 generations of a family. I met a grandfather, a son, and a grandson. And what played out is that situation was happening more with not just with the Kelly family at that point, okay? But it played out throughout that jail. And so I wondered, what is it that manufactured, these generations of folks coming into the criminal justice system? And I was trying to figure that out. I was doing some research. It was while I was there that some detainees came up to me, and we were improving those conditions, and they said, so I walked in. If you don't know anything about jail, they have a thing called direct supervision, in which the officer is actually in the housing area of where the detainees live. And so I would, as the jail administrator, as colonel, I would walk in and talk to them and ask them questions, see how they're living. And so one day I walked into a living area, and about 15 guys started surrounding me. And they said, hey, you the colonel, right? I said, yeah. He said, you that guy around here trying to help us. And we want you to know we appreciate you. And if you know anything about the grapevine, the efforts that we were making, and I didn't do anything by myself, I had a team of folks. And they just started clapping. And when I tell you it was an emotional moment that I said, man, you know, what do I do? How can I help my community? You know, how can I pay it forward to my aunt and those other mentors that helped me along my way? How can I pay that forward? And it was there I discovered that I had a higher calling. That's why I went to Savannah Impact. And I said, if I can catch these folks and start reducing recidivism in our community, maybe we can start heading, changing the direction that these folks are going. And so after that, I had a chance to work as the assistant chief of police for the Metropolitan Police Department. And I saw the role of police, and I saw how many were making mistakes. You know, they were not victims. They were actually committing crimes. You know, violent crime was occurring. People were dying through gun violence. So I had a chance to see what those conditions looked like. And so it was then that I was heavily involved with the United Way, because I was looking for solutions. You know, how do we prevent this from happening? What I discovered was the answer to my question. What is it that kept manufacturing generations of folks coming into the criminal justice system? And what I discovered, it was poverty. That all these other things are just symptoms. They're symptoms of poverty. Unemployment, crime, mental illness, all of those, not having access to good health care, education, all of that were products. And then all the hot spots that we had for crime came out of high poverty areas. And so you look at Step Up Savannah, I'm a member on their board. When you look at homelessness, I'm a member of the Union Mission Board. I'm a member of the Chamber of Commerce, where jobs are being created. I position myself in places that I can have an impact and help our community. But here's what I discovered with the United Way. That the United Way had a platform that did all of that. It was created by leaders in our community almost 82 years ago. You know, back in 1938, during the Great Depression, some leaders in our community got together and said, you know what? We need a platform. We need something that can unite our community, to bring us together to address these conditions. And can you imagine? And we've seen pictures and read stories in the history books. I was a history minor, and I remember reading about the Great Depression and how tough it was for families, how tough it was for children. You know, not able to get education, not being able to eat, not having shoes, not having clothes, not having transportation. And so the leaders in our community created a platform that still exists today, where everyone can pool their limited resources together to make sure that we have a safety net that everybody can come to get help. Isn't that amazing? And so I found myself aligning with this great organization. And I felt at home. You know, I felt, when I lived in North Carolina, that sense of family that I had there in that community. I felt home because there were givers all around the United Way. The staff there are just simply amazing. The culture of the United Way is one that has a spirit of giving, one that's always trying to pay it forward and seeing what we can do to make conditions better for our community. And so I felt really at home. And so today, when we look at the impact of COVID-19, we see that what our founders of the United Way thought about actually came true. A pandemic came. A day that we've never seen before, at least in our lifetime. A day that has impacted families like they never have before. We have a health crisis going on. We have staggering unemployment. You know, one of the industries hit the hardest was the hospitality industry. Over 91% of those that had jobs lost those jobs, and they're struggling. You know, I can tell you a short story about, I was up in Pembroke, Georgia, which is in Bryan County. I actually live in Richmond Hill. And it was there that I saw at a mobile food pantry. But I saw my neighbors and friends with their trunks popped, getting food for their family. Who would have thought that? It was an emotional moment for me. But Second Harvest is also one of our partner agencies. Was working along with the United Way to make sure that families in Bryan County had a place to go to get turkeys and food for Thanksgiving, a place to go to pay their mortgage. For the first time in our history, we're paying mortgages to help families keep their homes. We're paying rent, we're paying utilities to keep their lights on, things that we never really thought about before. We're giving access to health care and child care, things that some of us may take for granted. You know, some of us that still have jobs, but folks are struggling out there. And so the impact of COVID has led to all of this. And so when we started thinking about what was this campaign going to look like? You know, what was our goal going to look like? Here's what we did. We had an old formula that actually worked, a campaign fundraising formula that worked. You know, it raised for years, last year it raised $8.4 million. Here's what we said. We knew that companies were struggling to get back up started. We kept our same start date for the campaign because we wanted to keep some things the same. So in spite of all the challenges that came along with this pandemic, we looked at need. So we took that old formula and we just threw it out the door. We thought about those 54 agencies like Royce Learning Center, who's on the front lines doing the tremendous work. We thought about them. We thought about needs, that we had to continue to fund these agencies so that they can provide the services to folks that need them the most. And so we set a baseline goal of $8 million. We know that we probably need twice as much as that. So we started a campaign based on hope. Hope, just like we see blue skies. In spite of all that's going on, but beyond the horizon, there are blue skies, there's hope. And so the color sky blue became our color, and hope became our theme for this campaign. And that's what we've been doing. We've been spreading hope throughout the coastal empire, all the way from Bryan County to Liberty, Chatham to Effingham. Hope is being spread everywhere. Why? Because families need us now more than ever before. Now let me tell you how this thing works out. Everybody participated. So one of our goals was participation, was to create new givers. You know, there's an established, there are legacy givers that we have that always give to the United Way. But if the United Way is going to survive, if our 54 high-functioning, high-powering nonprofit agencies are going to survive, we got to create new donors, new givers. We can't, because those old ones are going to eventually what? They're going to fade out or die off, right? So we got to create a culture within our community, you know, if we're going to survive another 82 years of givers. And that's what we took on as one of our goals. How do we increase participation? That's why we're here tonight talking to this awesome organization called the Jaycees of Savannah. Because we know that you're givers too. We know the culture that you have and the impact that you're having and been having for years in this community. And so I'm very excited about being here. On March 24th, we started the United Way Coastal Empire COVID-19 Rapid Response Fund. And we immediately, out of our current funding, we released $80,000 to help families retain a stable housing and assisting them again in paying their rent and mortgage and utilities, where grace periods were not offered. You know, when this thing first started, nobody was, trying to give you that grace period. And folks didn't know where to go. You know, we got a stimulus check at some point, right? Well, where are the stimulus checks now? They're not there. You know, so one of the things we're able to do is make sure that folks, doesn't it feel good to know you have a place to go? No matter what it is, we have a place to go to get help. And there's a program that we have in the 82 programs that we have somewhere that'll meet a need. So since then, we've raised over $700,000 through the COVID Rapid Response Fund. And we've distributed over $600,000 of that money to over 1,900 individuals and families. We are truly making an impact. And so, where do we go from here? So we have an $8 million goal. And just today, one of the anchors of our community, Gulfstream Aerospace Company Corporation, made a huge donation of $1.5 million. That donation put us today at 93% of our goal. That's huge. Yeah, that's great. But we still have a gap that we have to fill. So how are we going to fill that gap? It's by those individual small donations. I say that some can give a little and some can give a lot. I've started traveling, going business to business from Liberty County to Bryan, to Effingham, and Chatham. And when I would knock on the business door, I would say, listen, I'm advocating on behalf of children and families. So the ask was easy for me. No, didn't bother me. What is it? You can't give something. Can you refer me to someone else? Can you advocate? And if you can't advocate, can you participate and volunteer? And so we have a platform for volunteers. We have a ton of programs. You can go and just find one that you like. If it matches and aligns with your passion, you can come and do volunteerism right there. So if you can't donate, advocate. If you can't advocate, participate. Give us your time. There are folks out there that need your expertise. You may have an expertise or some skill set that can help us help others. And we accept that at any time that you want to give. So in my final remarks, I want to share with you that there's a call for action. I told you in the beginning that I would share with you what you could do to help. Here's what you can do. Participate. Participate. I ask business, if you give $10, I'll take it. $10 that a family could use to buy a meal. If you can give $25, that'll help. If you can give $1,000 or $1,200 to become a beacon, I ask that you do that. This is a community. It's really investing in the community. That's exactly what it is. Your investment, when you invest in our community fund, you give us an opportunity to take those dollars along with others and multiply them to do more and have more reach into our community. And so I think we have a moral responsibility to take care of those that are most vulnerable right now. You see the number of cases that COVID is spreading. You're seeing deaths. You're seeing unemployment. You're seeing folks that are just struggling. Those of us that have jobs, I think we ought to give a little to help those that don't. And so I ask that you would join me in and the other 54 nonprofit agencies that we have, and go to uwce.org. That's uwce.org, and make a donation. I want you to remember, when you make that donation, that 95 cents of every dollar goes back into the community. And that's because of the Herschel Jenkins Trust Fund. Herschel Jenkins created a trust fund to take care of the majority of all of our administrative costs. So that fund, with a few other resources, allows us to put 95 cents of every dollar that you give goes back into the community. It goes through those 54 high-powered, high-functioning nonprofit agencies and direct to programs that help folks when they need help, like paying rent and paying their mortgage. That's powerful. And this organization, you know who it belongs to? It belongs to you. I'm a volunteer, just like you. But I chose to participate and to volunteer. I've been hanging out with these givers for over 15 years. And I can tell you, I get more in return than I give. This journey has shown me what my purpose is in life, why God put me here on this earth, and that's to serve others. And I can tell you, I'm a better person because of it. I'm a better father because of it. I'm a better neighbor because of it. I'm a better friend. I'm a better leader. I'm a better follower because of the experience that I've had here with United Way. And I ask that you join me. Donate, advocate, or participate. Thank you for the opportunity.